Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Better Body Radio. And today I'm excited to be joined by yet another muscle mentor, James Sutton. He's the lead educator in exercise mechanics at the Muscle Mentors, industry leaders in physique coaching and education. Now, James is a trainer of the trainers for sure, and a mentor to many PTs in the industry with an incredible amount of time and experience under his belt. In fact, James worked alongside Calum Raistrick, co-founder of the Muscle Mentors at M10 in Nottingham, where James actually mentored Calum in Cal's early years as a coach, which speaks volumes really for James's knowledge and experience, including his role as lead educator and head of coaching at M10 before joining the Muscle Mentors. James epitomizes the true physique and exercise professional as one of the very few coaches in the UK who has obtained mastery level with the resistance training specialist course curriculum created by Tom Purvis over in Oklahoma. So I wanted to do something a little bit different for today's podcast with James. He's mostly invited onto podcasts to talk about exercise mechanics nowadays, and for good reason, which we'll definitely touch on. However, James has so much experience and insight across the board, which I was really keen to tap into during our discussion today. So grab a coffee and enjoy what is sure to be a super insightful episode. All right, James, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, mate. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I think it's we're running through the Muscle Mentor crew one by one now. I've had obviously Cal on right near the start. I think it was like episode 8 we had Cal on, then I've had Luke on. So I think you're the third one in.
Cool. Working through the ranks.
I need to start reaching out to Ryan and Ross and Alex and everyone else. And Paul, if I would have had Paul on, actually, I had Paul on a week before he got announced as a Muscle Mentor. So technically speaking,
that doesn't count. You have to come back on and just go to the heaviest to lightest, work your way around or something.
Exactly. Order of recruits. I think you were the third person that did. Were you the third person brought in?
So me and Ryan came on together at the time. Yeah, so I think looking back date-wise, they're probably the guys that spoke about that, but Cal and Luke had 9 months or so, 6 to 9 months or so, 9 months probably by themselves, and then brought both of us on, myself obviously to help out a bit with the education stuff, and then Ryan to sort of assist obviously with the coaching side stuff as that was growing.
Yeah, it's been cool to obviously watch that. I think I started working with Cal before you and Ryan came on board. So it's been actually really cool to see the whole expansion of it and development of it and how much the education's growing and the coaching and everything else. So that's been really cool to see. So I think that probably segues as nicely actually into question number one. So I think at least anyone who's keeping tabs on the industry and the people within it, they've probably been living under a rock if they haven't heard of who the Muscle Mentors are, especially if you're in physique coaching or body composition in some way or another. But what they probably don't know so well is each of your individual backstories. So could you share with the listeners just somewhat of a highlight reel of your origins into the industry and how you ended up finding your way into the Muscle Mentors eventually?
Okay, well, I'll probably start at the start and then miss a big chunk out because otherwise we'll be here for an hour just going on my highlight reel. Well, I'd say first thing is a little story in a sense that I think everything happens for a reason, whatever that is. I was meant to start, I got a job at LA Fitness. Mark Coles recruited us back then, 14 years or so ago. He was doing the recruitment for LA Fitness regionally. I got a job starting, I think it was on the 1st of March. On the 27th of April, playing basketball, I went and dislocated my knee. Tore my MCL, dislocated my knee, and was out for, I was obviously in a brace for months, and then obviously couldn't walk for a number of months and on crutches and stuff. So it didn't actually start until July, right. Which kind of worked, I think, in my benefit looking back, because that gave me time to do some extra studying. Because if anyone in the early days know what it's like, you do a quick PT course and then you just try and get straight into it. So I actually had a period for a couple of months where I could do some extra studying, look at back then what was some business salesy stuff, look at some key things I was going to do program wise, get a few what was basic systems in place back in the day, not like the systems people have nowadays. Started coaching, and then when I did start as well, it was kind of a good time because I had sort of a lot of time on my hands to stay there and be there, and I was traveling. I was living half an hour away from when I was working, so I'd go there at 6:30 in the morning and stay until 8 at night. I think that's for me a key thing in the early days. If you are a coach, just spending time on the gym floor is huge. So as I say, I had 6 years there at LA Fitness, and definitely wasn't an overnight success at all. It took me months, if not years, to build and get past that 15 hours a week. I was sat at like that 15, 20 hours a week for the first year or so. Couldn't really go past that. So you hear some people that get into the industry, get into coaching, and then just before they know it, they got the gift of the gab. They sell, they get results straight away, and they're doing X amount of hours, earning X amount. Whereas no, that didn't happen at all. Spent at least a couple of years hovering around that 20 sessions. And then it crept up, and I soon got to 25, 30, 35, 40. I was averaging a fair bit. And at that moment in time, I was doing every, I guess, possible course I could do. So I wasn't trying to massively go out and spend loads of money. Really, I was just investing it back into myself. And everything from NASAM, performance enhancement specialist, like premiers, all advanced ones that they did. If anyone knows these names nowadays, I don't know if they're still about. So, did some functional movement type stuff with Gary Gray, did all the biosig, Poliquin stuff, the PICP1, PICP2. So I shed over studying in all different areas. And I think if you're a coach in your early days, that's required. You can't just go into, personally, I don't think, nutrition coaching or exercise mechanics or whatever it is. You just need to look a bit of everything. And the same with the clientele you work with. You need to work with a whole array of clients in the early days to get an idea. Oh, I more enjoy these, or I prefer people who are in a similar situation to myself. Because working with them large people helped me understand more from a mentoring perspective nowadays, help me get more of a broader picture in terms of, okay, where do my clients really want to go with it? They say they want to compete, but they've got a kid, they're a family man, they're a businessman, something like that. Start to delve in a little more mindset wise or whatever it may be. So in the early days, as I say, doing after a fair few years, large amount of hours, as I say, I was doing that studying with biosig and Poliquin and stuff like that. And on one of the courses, Mark Coles happened to be on there when I was in Sweden. It was like a 5-day training camp with Poliquin. So every evening we'd go for food and stuff like that. And he was chatting how he was going to open up a second facility. And I was like, oh, I'd got to that point where I was five-ish years or so at LA Fitness, pretty much on my own. I had one other close mate that I do all courses with. Any course we do together. And then we'd always vibe off each other. And we'd say, whatever sessions he was doing or whatever types of results that he was getting, I was trying to match or beat or whatever. But I was like, I need to be around more like-minded people. At that point in time, there wasn't really Facebook. I don't really think even Instagram was around. So you just didn't see what was really going on. You had one or two people that you spoke to, or personally, I had one or two people that I spoke to on different courses that I kept in contact with. But other than that, you just got your head down and cracked on. You spoke to the people in the club. But after any time I went on a course, you just got so pumped up, so hyped from being around like-minded people. And Mark was mentioning about opening a second facility in Nottingham. I was like, I think I might want to jump in on that and transition. At that moment in time, it was half an hour or so away from where I live, so it wasn't too far at all. Wasn't a location distance-wise where my clients could really jump over. So it's since leaving my client base, which I struggled with initially. So I did about a year or so where I transitioned and did both. So at that point in time, I was doing 50, 60-hour weeks PT. I do 6:30, 7:30, 8:30 at LA Fitness, drive over to Nottingham, drive over to M10, and then work there for the late morning till the evening. Saturday at LA Fitness, the gym was open for 8 hours. So I do 8 sessions back to back. Just go 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, 12:30 until it shut at 4:30. Just to still get the sessions in. I still, in a sense, just the type of person that I am. I never want to sort of disappoint people or let people down. So part of it was like, I don't want to leave them clients because I feel like I'm letting them down. And I knew at some point in time, obviously, I had to leave. But for me, that transition worked nice, just to really keep my head on the coaching floor and get a lot of hours in, which definitely everyone's career is almost needed. And then got into the competing side of stuff, and from a time commitment point of view, that meant my sort of position at LA Fitness there just logistically wasn't really working. As things were getting busier at M10, I was trying to focus on competing. That had to go. So finished there at LA Fitness, obviously then went full 100% spent at M10, and that was 5-6 years or so there, which was obviously an amazing experience, being around like-minded coaches, stepping on stage a couple of times, breaking my body numerous times, learning from that, getting injured, pushing on. But that's a continual thing around all of my career in terms of why I've probably delved into exercise mechanics more, because I've broken my body. So I've got to understand how I can still train to a certain intensity, but adapt things, play with things, adjust things. Sometimes as you keep on training and training and trying to push harder, things aren't going to break down. So got into exercise mechanics more, but yeah, then continued on obviously with the studying side of stuff along that whole journey myself, and that led to start to teach little bits through the M10 camps, through the M10 courses, start to sort of build the courses and stuff. Obviously with Mark along that side of stuff. So it was amazing experience, amazing ability to get in front of other coaches. And that just naturally transitioned into a bit more of that education side of stuff and trying to just go down that route a little bit more. At no point have I wanted to stop coaching. And even to this day, I still do a small handful of face-to-face hours that I don't think I'll finish. So alongside online coaching, there's still face-to-face hours and the education side of stuff. So we got to a point after about 5 years, 6 years, I forget the dates exactly, where I just felt like I wanted to see what else was out there, wanted to see what other options there were, and felt just like something different. So everything was always amazing when I was at M10, but you just sometimes get to a point where over the situation you're in, where I was like, for me, I was like, oh, what's next? Left, obviously, M10, and then 6 months later or so, joined up with the Muscle Mentors and Calum. But in a sense of story, I could go back and tell a story related to Calum inquired for coaching with myself. He wanted to do a photo shoot for himself, and he inquired, and I so didn't turn him down. I said, oh, sorry, I'm fully booked. So that was when I was leading up towards a competition, and I was like, no, I can't take anyone else on. I was like, I'm fully booked. I know you got a photo shoot, but I can't take you on until June, whenever it was. And he's like, oh, not a problem, I'll wait. So he ended up waiting. We ended up just doing the last 6 weeks, and then I carried on and coached him for a year or so after that. But I always look back and think that if he'd gone with another coach at that moment in time, he probably wouldn't have, looking back at it, he probably wouldn't have come to M10 because he potentially came to, not trying to sound arrogant, but he eventually came to M10 because I coached him. And then when he came up to the practical camps, he saw the vibe, saw everything and stuff, and liked obviously the environment, and then obviously went down that route. But it'd just be interesting to know that if, say, he hadn't come back to me after I'd said, oh, no, I'm fully booked at this moment in time, where I would have been within the Muscle Mentors, that still probably would have happened because Cal knew Luke and stuff like that as a different avenue. But if Cal hadn't come to M10, that could have been a whole different story.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny.
That's a summary in 2 minutes of a 14-year career.
There you go. I think it's a pretty good summary, to be fair. You kind of condensed that fairly well. But it's interesting, though, like the kind of butterfly effect that's kind of had with all these little opportunities and meetings, and even with Mark, like you said, I actually had no idea that you knew Mark pre-M10, and that was kind of the link and everything there. So that's kind of quite interesting. Probably a lot of people listening actually won't even know that either. So that's pretty.
Yeah, I think like the key point as to why sometimes I say them is you never know where connections are going to lead. Like we were chatting just before the call that you spoke to Dan Smith at M10 years and years ago, and that's how you knew myself and some of my background. I was like, Dan had spoke about you, but I never quite put the two together, and you never quite know where a connection is going to lead you. You never quite know what door that's going to open up. So in a sense, I'd say if you are coaches, get on courses, network with other coaches, right? Whether it's with them, because you never know what door that's going to open at some point. Yeah. So if you've got clients, if they're online, if they're face-to-face, make sure you build a business that allows you to build rapport with them, because you never know what doors they're going to open for you as well.
Yeah.
So rather than just thinking, oh, there's a number, there's a before and after picture, move on to the next one, or let me get so many templates in place so I don't actually have communication with my clients to build a rapport with them. Like, no, it's like we live in a service business, and you never know what could be around that corner. You never know what opportunity that could open. I know for myself, I almost think it's a blessing that I dislocated my knee, and 2 days before I was meant to start my job. It's 2 days before I was meant to start as a personal trainer, because that allowed me to spend a bit more time studying. That allowed me to just work on a few things outside of the coaching. That allowed me to, when I did start, had a few things in place. Mark still had the opportunity, or still left that job open to me and stuff like that. So you never quite know what's going to happen. But yeah, if I hadn't met Mark initially, I would have never, I don't know, maybe heard about M10. So you never know where a connection is going to lead. So yeah, as long as you're always, I think, taking opportunities with good people. If you feel like someone's a good person, then it might not lead to something in the short term, but long term, if you say yes, then you'd never know where that's going to lead. I think that's just a key point maybe to get across.
Yeah, true. Not anything that I can actually share on this podcast. Now we've had two somewhat of those situations occur very recently, both in terms of a new team member, but also in terms of potential where we're actually going to be conducting our services as well. And literally all of it came from, well, I think two things. Yes, one, networking, but actually the second part of that is also being a nice person as well, because I think, especially in our industry as well, there's a lot of narcissism. There's a lot of people that's very much just in it for themselves. They're not really doing it for pure reasons. And most of the opportunities that certainly we've ended up achieving or being able to fall into, so to speak, it actually came from, oh, well, I remember when you helped me out 4 years ago and you were really nice. And then, so I think, yeah, it's just network, but also just be a good human. And that usually
Yeah.
comes back to you as well.
Yeah, 100%, and partly maybe a little plug, but myself, Luke, and Paul, and the boys, we're about to do some practical camps in Birmingham, a brand new facility, a place called MK Health Hub. But I coached the owner of that 6 years ago. I coached him through a transformation. Always kept in contact with him. He came over and did a mentorship day with me while I was at M10 and stuff. Did a little bit with a couple of his guys, sort of mentoring wise at his facility. And then over the last, year and a half ago, we were meant to start doing practical camps at his facility, but one thing or another, obviously COVID, that didn't happen. But without me working with as a client, without me understanding more about his business and getting to know him as a person, if he was just a number at that moment in time and just, oh yeah, I'm doing a transformation with him, I never would have known that he owned a very successful personal training gym. And I never would have found out that he's going to open a second facility. That second facility happened to be in a place in Birmingham where he doesn't run coaching at the weekend. So we're like, oh, so the gym's free. So your business model is just in the financial area of Birmingham where you just run clients through the week and the gym's free at the weekend. It's like, yeah. So it's like, we could run a camp at your place, can't we? That'd be amazing. Obviously, having the privilege of running camps at M10 when no one's on the gym floor, and then the year or so where we run it in Birmingham, we're at a commercial gym. It was just not ideal from a client experience perspective with other members being there. So again, just goes down to opportunity. The fact that he was just one of my clients, but he's someone that finished working with me, but we still built a good level of rapport while he was working with me. And that led to a contact 2, 3, 4 years down the line that has now helped the muscle mentors out in a sense that we've got a facility that we can go to that's incredibly new. Everything's all new kit in there. It's going to look beautiful, that we can run 25, 30 people in a practical camp and not be disturbed by members.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's funny, it's funny how you managed to get into a place where, oh, we can get this whole place to ourselves. That's brilliant. In fact, we when we do eventually get back to the UK, because I'm actually due to come out and actually do some of the Integra practicals at some point. But maybe we'll have to try and get out and get to some of your practicals as well.
Yeah. Hopefully dates line up nicely for you there.
Let's see, we'll find out, I guess. So actually, like touching on M10 and your time there, that literally segues is super nicely into the next question. So literally touching on your time there, you played like quite a bit, in the integral role by the sounds of it now, actually you were kind of part of the founding, almost initial core kind of senior team within M10 at the start as well. And
yeah, so Mark brought myself on almost as a senior coach at that position because I already had 6 years of experience and had results behind me at that point. Whereas before, anyone he'd brought on was almost like in his, you say junior coach position, but he just had a standard coach position. And then I applied, and through discussions and we end up came up with this senior role, which was amazing for me because then straight away I was sort of mentoring the younger guys there, and they'd been in the industry for anywhere from 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years or so. But it's amazing to see where the speed they developed at in that first 12 months. I'm like, damn, it's taken me 6 years to get to this point. So like the benefit of being around like-minded people just raises your standards, raises your ability to progress. So I think for me, one of the key things of what I got out of my time at M10 was raising my standards. Because sometimes when I was at my own at LA Fitness, occasionally I get sloppy in terms of my coaching on the gym floor, stuff like that, which when you work long hours, something's going to happen. But when you've constantly got Mark looking over your shoulder or other guys looking up to you who respect you, then you constantly stay at a high level. So I think that's a massive benefit there. And I say also with the clientele that then I was in front of. At an LA Fitness, I was at a club which was, I don't know, £30 a month to go to. Standard sort of membership was just middle of the road back then in them days. And then I was charging sort of 35 to 45 pound an hour, which for where I was at was still sort of decent rate. But then going over to M10 and charging 60 pound an hour, you're going to bring in a different type of clientele as well. So as well, being around other successful coaches was massive, but just being around successful people who had a massive business that runs, I don't know, a business. And one guy I can think of off the top of my head, previously been around him. I've coached him for a good few years now, but he sold his business with 300 employees. And now he's got multiple properties, HMO properties, house and multiple occupancy properties that he rents out and stuff. So it's just like people like that are good to have as, say, a mentor in a sense, but they're not a mentor because they're a client. So you're always teaching them, but like you're going to build rapport with that minute, that 2 minutes in between certain sets. You're going to build rapport, and it's the ability as a coach to go sometimes off topic and build rapport, but then straight away bring that back into the coaching session to make sure they continue adding value. So I say, just when I say being around successful people, that's one, the coaches and the clients that I was now training while I was there. So it's on both levels, and both of them areas just help continue to elevate myself as well, as a person and as a coach. So I think, that's in essence probably the most beneficial thing about that environment, and my time really at M10.
Yeah, and also I suppose the kind of life lessons and skills you get from, like you say, those successful people as well, because it's like when you're entrenched in that environment and all you do is like nutrition training, etc. But being able to get those perspectives from different industries, different points of view and thought processes, that's quite invaluable. It gives you a lot wider perspective on everything. Also, like you said as well, gives you a lot more relatability to the clientele that you work with as well over time.
Yeah. And then, like, in that sense as well, another, I think a massive benefit as well is sometimes with facilities similar to M10, similar to UP, similar to stuff like that, people's egos are so big and they want to be that key man. They want to be that key person. Whereas if you're earlier in your career and you're at a facility like that, it allows you to elevate your game so quickly. Or if you go and work for another coach, like that, or you be mentored by another coach, like the level or the quickness you can get up to par in the same way as most people want to straight away early in their game want to have their own brand or their own name or their own company. There's potentially a time and place definitely for that. But I think, yes, I've been successful through hard work and consistency and being in the industry for 14 years. But I'm not going to deny for 1 second being under the M10 brand helped massively, got me in front of hundreds, if not thousands of coaches. Being now alongside Calum, Luke, and the other guys alongside Muscle Mentors, again, that helps me insanely as well. Whereas if in the early days I just stayed at LA Fitness, I thought, no, I want my own thing. I don't want to be working for someone else. Who knows where my career would have gone? But I like to think I made the right decisions. And I'm more successful now because of the people I was around and because of the people that helped me get in front of, rather than just trying to do everything on my own.
I think where this question was heading essentially was going to be the idea of what were the 2 to 3 greatest lessons that you had in your time while you were at M10. But I think you've kind of pretty much just answered that. And we suppose to summarize that, it's probably going to be get yourself around, like maybe get in an environment where you're going to grow. Yes. Don't be scared to pay your dues and, like you say, work with or under people to, earn your stripes, so to speak, earn your knowledge base and all that sort of stuff. Get mentored, and maybe the third one would be, I don't know, maybe like seek out mentors early rather than waiting years and years so that you can escalate growth as well.
Yeah, you can just escalate your growth so much quicker. And I, in a sense, did it the hard way. I know 6 years of being on my, just because other opportunities weren't around then. The industry was a completely different ballgame. So what it is then, there wasn't the type of facilities like M10, like UP, like there weren't them type of facilities out there where you could go. There wasn't, in a sense, the coaches around that you could go and work under. There wasn't the coaches that you can get in front of potentially to try and be mentored by. It wasn't as accessible then. But yeah, nowadays, like you can learn what I did in the first 6 years, if not 10 years, in the matter of months, really, from the accessibility of education, the matter of 12 to 24 months. You can really sell your knowledge. And yes, there's always going to be benefits, I think, from experience and going and doing things that didn't work. For myself, going down the functional movement route and knowing in a sense, no, that's not the direction I want to go. But that still has certain aspects that have helped me, I think, along the way. It'll help me still nowadays with the coaching eye. One of the things within the functional movement side of stuff that I was looking at would be assessing someone's sort of gait, assessing when someone's walked. So you look at how the pelvis moves, look at what's going on around the foot, look at the spine as they're walking, as they gait. And to get skilled at that takes a bloody good eye. But that eye can then help when someone's performing a deadlift, an RDL, a chest press, a cable chest press, a cuff pull down, whatever it is. Like that coach's eye is key. So yeah, I think that there's still definitely a benefit from going and experimenting yourself, but you've got to have a combination of experimenting yourself and also just take advantage of where the industry's at the moment and just educate and get mentored.
Definitely. And the thing as well, I think a good point to probably touch on with that as well is fine, you can get so much accessibility to all this knowledge, and it's so true. You can literally, there's so many now, like you look at like Muscle Nerds, for example, I mean, incredible resource with Flip Lehman and those guys go and do that. M10 mentorship, go with that. Muscle Mentors membership portal, people can go on there and probably, I think we probably speak for both of us, for Mal and I, and even our team, if we had access to something like the portal when we started as PTs, it's literally like, yeah, within 2 years, we'd have probably got to the level we got after like 6 or 8 years.
Yes.
It's like that stuff wasn't around, social media wasn't around. You couldn't like hear about people that weren't in the same country. I mean, you barely even heard about people from down south. Like I remember when I first started out in the industry, I don't think M10 was around just yet, but even when I first moved out to Dubai, like I hadn't really even heard of M10, and it was only with the birth of social media that actually you start to see, oh, there's this ultimate performance thing that this guy Nick Mitchell does. Oh, there's this M10 thing, and in the States there's this MI40 thing that's opening now, and you just don't. It's a completely different time now with social media. The access to great minds that are out there. Yeah. It's a bit of a side question. How do you think? What would you say probably the pros and cons of how social media has shaped the industry?
Pros in terms of if you are good at your game, if you are a good coach, then you can get in front of people so much easier. The ability to build a successful business and scale that and help more people is, you could say, easier. Yes, there's more people doing it, but you've got access to potentially more people. So I think there's massive benefit in there. You can present what you're doing quite easily. You can put information out very, very easily. You haven't got to try and gather email addresses. You haven't got to try and walk up to someone on the gym floor to give them some information or trying to help them out. Like as nerve-wracking as that may be for some people in the days, you can just sort of try and put it out there and obviously let the world see it. And it does sometimes doesn't maybe feel as nerve-wracking putting information out to 100 people. But if you had to present in front of 100 people, then that would be nerve-wracking if you could see them right in front of you. But you put information out on social media and you're getting hundreds, if not thousands, of people seeing it. So there's massive benefits from that. If you've got the knowledge, if you've got the skill, if you've got the confidence, if you've got the platform and stuff to then reach more people. But in an obvious way, you know where I'm going to go with it. The downside is that then any man and his dog can get in it, and anyone at any point can call themselves a entrepreneur or a six-figure business coach or an online coach, even for that matter, when they've never actually had experience face-to-face. They've never actually really had experience coaching them. So it's so hard then for the end user, whether that's general population or whether that's even a coach, a PT, who wants to get coaching themselves, wants to get mentoring themselves, wants to get business coaching themselves. So from all avenues, then it's tough because you can just get lost in what's presented, that facade, that front that someone's putting on. And if someone's got a few things in place, then straight away they can make them look really successful. And it's given an avenue for guys and girls with incredible genetics who work bloody hard, but don't necessarily know really what they're doing to build a business, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for something, but then you just get that influencer style thing that they don't actually really know what they're doing. They're just because they look incredible. And there's some people out there who look incredible and know an insane amount as well. So I'm not stereotyping that at all, but yeah, there's different avenues that if you do look good through sponsorship, through social media, and we all know that if we post a picture where we're looking jacked or shredded in some way, that's going to get double the amount of likes or comments than something around education, something that's actually giving value. So yeah, I'd say a couple of pros and cons there.
It's funny though, because I think I actually very much I'm grateful for the times where we didn't have social media, because all of those soft skills and everything that you had to get from not having the ability to hide behind the screen and just post it and put it out there. Like I think that that's almost a bit lost now, and I almost feel certainly we've seen it out here in Dubai as well. Like a lot of coaches, young coaches coming into the industry now are it's almost like this sense of entitlement. Not all of them. Again, this is a generalization, but there's this kind of sense of, well, I want to just come in and I want to have clients, and I'm putting this stuff out on social media, and I have 10,000 followers, so I should just be busy. And it's like, well, what have you done to earn that? Like, what have you learned and applied successfully? And I think that goes back to your thing about getting all the knowledge. You can gain knowledge in 24 months, but there's something to applying that knowledge and
100%,
failing and seeing what works and what doesn't over a long period of time. And obviously, that's no one can replicate the 14 years you've had in the industry from an experience point of view. No one could do that, regardless of how many courses they've done. You have to kind of just put in the hours and work the hero shifts like you used to do on the weekends, 8 hours straight, and everything else. So, yeah, I think that's a very key point. But I'll move into the kind of third question. So, and it was kind of a nice segue from before. So you've achieved, I mean, pretty impressive physique transformations with every type of client that most coaches are likely going to come across at some point. Like you said, you work with such a wide, diversified clientele. So if you were to provide coaches maybe, let's just say 2 to 3 nuggets of advice to improve not only the quality, but the consistency of their client results, what would they be and why?
It's a tough one to answer for me with any level of detail, because if you can answer with detail, then we need a half an hour on my point backing it up. So it's going to come back to probably similar points that we've almost, in a sense, already discussed. That if you want to get better results with your clients, build rapport and make sure they can trust you. Because if you can't build rapport with them, you're never going to get past that first couple of sessions or that first month or 2 months. You're never going to have enough time with them to actually get a result. And if they don't trust you in terms of the way you present yourself and the way you talk, the way you speak about your services, how you are on the sales call, the information you're putting out before, whatever it is, they're not going to either start with you or they're not going to continue to work with you. When you try and say to them, okay, let's go and implement whatever it is, random figure, but this 1,200 calorie day, this fast day, this different strategy, or let's just, for some reason, let's just, we see some stuff going on health-wise, let's pull down protein. And they're like, what? I need to have protein high because I need that to build muscle. But if you can back up as to why you want to pull down protein because of what you've seen, they're going to then trust you. They're going to then stick with it. And then they're going to then get that result of improved digestion or whatever it may be. But that trust can be built obviously through knowledge. That trust can be built in a number of ways. But for me, that would be the first key one. I think sort of rapport and trust is huge. Second thing, I'd maybe say, don't be scared of going aggressive. In a sense that if you want to get a result, yes, we've got to have an understanding of mentally, are they in a good place to push hard? Physically, can their body handle it? How they sleep and how they're recovering? But at some point in time, you've got to sort of pull the pin a bit. And even if that's with a general pop client, but how you pull the pin with a general pop client might be different from how you pull the pin with a physique client, or how you pull the pin on yourself. But at some point in time, you may need to go low calories or high expenditure, or do something that, from everything you've read, like, oh no, I can't go there. I can't go that low on calories for this person, this body weight. But like to give you, and I say an example, I always remember Josh Malley. I don't know if anyone does or doesn't know him, but extremely successful bodybuilder, worked at M10 when I was there. I remember days when he was dieting at 128 odd kilos, lean 128 kilos on under 2,000 calories.
Jesus Christ.
Like, he didn't stay there all the time, but at certain days, that was where he's at. So then, okay, let's relate that to any normal person who's not shredded and above 120 kilos. Even if you're a normal person, say 80 or 90 kilos, that's the equivalent of you going 1,200 calories, 1,100 calories. And then we say to a female that, they can never go but random figures, but 1,200 calorie mark, can't go below 1,000 calories. 1,000 calories, oh no, you're going to get some sort of metabolic damage or whatever it is. But at some point in time, if you want to get that result, you've got to, whether it's pull food in some way, you've got to maybe go low calories, or you've got to go aggressive in some way. You can't stay nicey if you actually want to have impressive physique transformations. And then at the other end of the scale, I'd maybe say that for 5-6 years early in my career, I didn't track calories with anyone because there wasn't MyFitnessPal. Like, you could still go online and work it out, but I got good results. Yes, I probably would have got better results now, but I got good results with looking at someone's food for 5 to 7 days, actually coaching them and saying, okay, I can see you're having this through the week. Can we maybe pull that out or just have that on a Friday? Or that takeaway that you're having, is there anything we can adjust through that? So on the other end, that if you want to get good results with clients, then know how to transition them through a coaching process. If you're working with general pop and they haven't got a clue what MyFitnessPal even is, let alone trying to track everything, understanding where they're at and knowing in a sense how to transition them through a 6-12 month journey, let alone a 2-3 year journey sometimes that we can have for clients. So don't feel that you've got to track everything because everyone at this moment in time says, you got to track calories, you got to use MyFitnessPal, you got to know essentially how many calories they're having in, so they're in a calorie deficit. Yes, you've got to be in a calorie deficit, but like the important thing is, are they going to stick and follow the plan? Are you going to build the trust to do that? So in the early days, you might just look at their food plan, look at their food diary, and then advise them on a base meal plan, advise them on base meals that might work with her, pull some of the high calorie foods out. So that's not going to get incredible results with clients, but for a lot of general pop clients, that will actually get a result, which then before you know it, 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, we'll get that amazing transformation. So I think that's the key thing, is seeing the potential in your client, that it might not be an 8, 10, 12-week transformation. And if anything, I'd advise not trying to go for them aggressively. But if you can keep that client for 6 months, 12 months, etc., you'll get an incredible result with them if they just stay with you. And when you post a result, you don't have to say how long it was. No one really knows. Yes, like I've bragged about it before of what I've got in 8 weeks, in 7 weeks, in 9 weeks, whatever it is. But nowadays, a lot of times when I post pictures, and then sometimes I may just put when someone started with me, say a short period of time, but a lot of times I'll just put the picture, put the before and after, and don't necessarily talk about how long it's been. And sometimes it might be a year. So that's the key thing. If you build rapport, build trust, go aggressive if you need to go aggressive, and know where your client is at if they're a beginner type client in the early days, so you can keep them for a long period of time and then get to that point where you can pull the pin, get to that point where they can track stuff and they understand that. So I don't know if that answers the question, but in a roundabout way, I hope to give you a few points.
Those answers 2 and 3, I think, and we do get a few coaches listening to this podcast as well. I think a lot of coaches are going to feel a bit kind of, quite reassured. And certainly if I look back at Mal and I, we actually had a discussion on this not that long ago, that one of the mistakes we made before we set up the current company that we had like maybe 4 or 5 years back was exactly your second point, feeling like we couldn't, we can't really go that aggressive with someone. And I look back on that now as one of the biggest mistakes we made, because there was some results that were sitting there ready to be taken, and we just didn't have the instinct to just pull the trigger on it. And so yeah, and obviously some of the clients we have now, we've had to go quite low with some of them, especially I work with quite a lot of females. And even after spending like maybe 20 weeks bringing their food up and getting their physiology in a really responsive place, even you think, oh, that's magically going to fix everything. Well, not really. It's done great to relieve a lot of the stress and everything else, maybe get the menstrual cycle back on track. But some of them are having to go really low, and that is what it is. But the good thing is, because we've spent the time building the rapport and we talked about this way in advance, that you might have to go pretty low, because that expectation has been managed and it's been set early. Then the perception of how that feels is actually quite different. Whereas if you tell them, oh, if we go below that, you're going to be starving, your energy is going to be crap. I've got one girl at the moment where she's probably going to have to finish around about 1100, and she's actually still feeling kind of okay. Yeah. So whereas if you were scared about going below a certain point, you might not ever actually reach that point. So I think that's a fantastic point. I think that's the advice I wish I had 5 years ago.
Yeah. And look, there will be certain body types and stuff like that. They're just so small frame. I've got a female that she's been with me for 3 years or so. We've run loads of blood work, loads of tests, stuff like that. So she's in as optimal health point as like we can get, trying to look at a deeper level. But we can't really get her food above 1,300-1,400 calories without her weight going up. So her maintenance point is 1,100-1,200 calories. Because of her body weight, she's a tiny frame. There's not much on her at all. But when she diets, then we have to go below 1,000 calories. And it's not like we haven't pushed food up. It's not like she hasn't spent a year. We've spent like 9 to 12 months with food for her high, and her dealing with being a bit softer and working on other things and getting everything as good as possible, sleep wise, rest and heart rate, HRV, etc. We've gone through all the different lifestyle things, but we still got to go there when we go back through a dieting phase. And that's just, yeah, some people have got good genetics, they can hold more food. Other people's, you can say whether it's good or bad genetics or not, but we do everything we can. But you still just need to go a place that on paper you're like, oh no, I can't do that, I can't go there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think from just the psychology point of view, I think the key point made there is that you spent the time outside of dieting. And I think a lot of people feel like they have to go there right from the get-go. And actually, a lot of people really benefit from not starting with a diet, but rather, like you said, doing all of that groundwork first. And I think from a psychological point of view, when they reach the point where it's time to diet, they're almost kind of ready for it. I don't know if you found that as well. Like, well, I've done all this stuff. I kind of just want to go now. Do you find that with a lot of people?
Yeah, 100%. And that I think that comes down to your ability, again, to build rapport, build trust, and almost like get that connection early on and get that buy-in. Because if you go with the approach where, okay, initially, and I do this, I say a number of times with clients, where we're going initially and we're going to run maintenance calories for these first 8 weeks, 10 weeks. You know, if you do that, you're going to get a result, but not that like postable result in a sense, which you can brag about. Whereas, you know, they've got to be brought in right off the get-go for a minimum 6 months, if not 9, 12 months, to warrant trying to get that transformation. Because we all want to get that transformation. We all know that's the number one thing that can sometimes drive a coaching business. Having that before and after picture is huge. And if you're going to go through a health optimization phase, whatever you want to call it, in the early days, you've got to believe that client's going to be with you long term, or have some form of verbal or financial commitment, however you work your business, for them to be with you 9, 12 months sort of period, because that is going to get a better result long term. But sometimes in the early days, coaches haven't got the ability to maybe build the trust, build rapport, have the sales call on that side of stuff to say, okay, this is going to be a year's journey. And now they're just thinking, oh, short term with it. But yeah, if you are at that point in your career, then definitely that's the right decision to make a lot of the time in terms of running a maintenance style phase in the early days.
I think a lot of coaches have been thinking, but they're absolutely petrified of that because the client wants to see change now. But I think, like you said, it is just like, it's managing expectations. It's getting that buy-in. Like, listen, we'll go there, but you just have to give me this first. And if you do that and you do everything that we asked, then you'll be so happy that we did it. And I think, certainly in recent times, a lot of the clients we work with, I don't think there's anyone that's came to us and said, I wish we hadn't done that first 4, 5, 6 months. No one ever really regrets that, but it was just
100%, yeah,
clearly explained at the start that there's no doubt what's going to happen. But I think a lot of coaches are like, yeah, we'll get you absolutely ripped, and then they start running out of trouble, and then they're not really committing to either phase. It's kind of in and out, and I think that's where it gets big problem. Just communication breaks down, and that trust goes as well.
Yeah, 100%. As soon as you lose that, the whole process is gone a bit.
Definitely. So moving on to probably a topic that's a little bit more, I'd probably say it's something that you're certainly becoming much more well known for, but I wanted to touch on all the other stuff before this because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, James is brilliant with exercise mechanics, and I think they forget about that 14 years of experience and all the insight you've had getting, great results with people. But we couldn't have you on and not talk a bit about exercise mechanics as well. We had to. So, and you share so much information now, especially like you said, one of the benefits of social media is people like yourself who have got the actual knowledge and experience to share valuable insights with people. It's a really, really big positive. What would you say has probably been the biggest changes you've made personally, both in terms of your own training and as a coach, since studying what some might not know, the RTS curriculum, but certainly many coaches out there in this area very much recognize the resistance training specialist. So what's been the biggest changes for you and as a coach?
Again, it's a tough answer to give with it being really relatively concise and to the previous one, but just understand really, I can't remember where I heard the quote from, but the forces that make us can also break us. Right? The forces that can build your physique, that can build chest, legs, arms, back, whatever it is, are the same forces that can break you down. So if you haven't got an understanding of what's just some sort of understanding of what's going on internally within the joint, some form of understanding of what's going on inside the muscle, what effect that's having, some form of understanding with the forces you're applying to the machine, to the equipment, the force of the machine, the equipment is applying to you. Like, to understand that is key, and as you could almost say, is malpractice if you don't, because it really is the one thing we're qualified to do.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if it answered the question, but the key thing that I say I got out of understanding exercise mechanics stroke RTS, it's just as simple as it sounds, understanding exercise. Because when I look back for the first 6 years of my career, probably a little bit more than that, first 6-7 years of my career, I didn't really understand what I was performing. I didn't really have a inside visual perspective of what was going on during that bench press. There were still just generic cues that I'd been given or that I'd seen, or generic exercises that the coach had given me or the mentor had given me or the educator had put across, and that I didn't really actually know what made up that exercise. So that was the key thing. It gives you that deeper ability to actually understand what's going on. And then from that point, once you've actually done some proper studying of it, you can make the decision if you go randomly, but down Pilates route, down yoga route, down the bodybuilding route, down the functional training route, down the CrossFit route. You actually then can understand everything involved. So it's not for a second that if you then go down and do CrossFit, that's good or bad, but understanding, well, now if that bar is flying up and down and you're jumping up and down or whatever, then the potential forces involved with the speed that you're training at, with the speed of just things moving down. So it just gives a deeper appreciation for exercise as a whole, which is absolutely needed for us to be successful coaches, whether that's face-to-face or online in today's world, that we need to understand fully what's going on inside, in theory, inside our clients as they're performing that chest press, that bicep curl.
I think that's that definitely for me. When I think it was about 3 years ago, I really started kind of getting into studying this, and it was much later that actually just the last 8 months that I contacted Michael and got into actually starting the RTS curriculum. I'd always started reading and learning about biomechanics well before that, and you're 100% right. It's such an eye opener when you've been coaching for such a long time, and then you realize how little you actually understand what you're applying to people, and then you get a big massive piece of humble pie, and you literally, I almost feel the last 2 years I've been starting all over again, and it's been super humbling. But actually, my coaching, business, application, everything, it's probably been some of the best 2 years. It's definitely been the best 2 years because it's been incredibly rewarding, because you just, in terms of the response you get from your client's training, the not getting those injuries and niggles that they used to get in the past. Or if someone does get a niggle from something, you have the strategies in place to actually work around that or to help them overcome it. And so I think, like, I wish more of the exercise mechanics stuff. I know Tom's been at this a long time, which, like, knowing he's been at this pre-2000s and some people only just hearing of him now, it's insane. And there was something like that needed much, much earlier than.
It's scary. He's been about it before 2000s and stuff. When you see some old videos of him in the 90s, stuff like that, actually how long he's been at it. But I think even in these last couple of years, these last 3 to 5 years, where exercise mechanics is huge. It's come on leaps and bounds from where it was. I know in the early days, some of the stuff that I was teaching through M10 and stuff like that, now that's just available information and stuff, but people have to pay to go on a course to really get that information. Whereas now you can just easily get that on YouTube, on social media, and that's almost easy accessible information. So it does get out there to so many more people. But yeah, I think it's something that just hopefully will continue to grow, that in our little world in the fitness industry, people know about it, but we all know that if you go into a quote unquote a normal gym, 99.9% of people just haven't got a clue about what they're actually doing. They train the same way as they did when they were 15, 16 years old, or they train the same way that their mate does, or what their personal trainer has trained them or something, and they're just really doing choreography and movement. They're not doing anything in terms of actual muscle contraction or having appreciation for what's really going on.
Yeah, big time. It's kind of like you said, it's the checklist of cues and the kind of, if I just follow this protocol, then that ticks all the boxes. And I think that's I have actually, I don't know if you've ever had clients say this to you as well, though, but you're not in, I suppose, those commercial gym environments now, but we base ourselves, well, for the moment, out of a commercial gym, and it's an interesting environment. Very different standards up and down across the board, and often my clients will ask, like, does this not just irritate the life out of you? Understanding what you know, seeing all this, it's like they're not paying me for a service, so it's not my business to butt in. And I think that's hard as well, because once you do start learning this stuff, it's easy to become a bit of a douchebag and become quite arrogant, like, well, I know this and they know nothing. And it's like, well, you have to have a bit of empathy, because you don't know what you don't know. But it is super eye-opening when you do start thinking, like, right, well, they've set that client up that way, doing that exercise with these cues, and you just know that that's, well, they're, orthopedic surgeon's going to have a hell of a time 2-3 years from now. He's going to make bank, which is unfortunate, but that's the way that it is.
At this moment in time, it's been a while since I've obviously been around other personal trainers in commercial gyms. But when I left M10, until I set up a little studio myself, just to do some one-to-one clients with and train myself, I trained at a commercial gym, just a place where I could almost pay as you go and just take my clients in there. I did that, a year or a year and a half or so. And some of the things I saw the other PTs do there is shocking. I always remember one guy on a chest supported row. We know, like, giving a reverse action cue of pushing your chest into that chest pad as you're trying to pull through. Something very simply that we might cue if we see someone just trying to cheat and pull back. Now, this guy was stood behind him with his hand pushing into the middle of his back. And you could see the guy's head knocking back and forth as he's trying to go through every rep, trying to force off him and almost pull back and push into him as hard as possible. And he was pushing into his back as much as possible. So there was no thought of what's going on at all. It was just counting reps, count to 10, count to 12, whatever it is. So yeah, I experienced that even relatively recently when I had that transition of coming out of M10. When I was working at just an old school bodybuilding sort of style gym, I go in, pay my fees, get it done, get out there. But yeah, some of the stuff I saw there was shocking.
I think it even stems online as well. So it's funny, I'm actually presenting, we've got a local fitness professional summit this coming week, and I'm presenting a small thing on exercise mechanics. One thing I actually never mentioned to you off the call is I'm launching a small, it's kind of like an 8-week mentorship, which is literally covering the really basics of exercise mechanics, nothing to the level that you guys are likely presenting at your camps, but certainly for the way the region is out here and the level that the general trainer's at, it's adequate for them. And doing some research, looking at some, because it's kind of been based off the idea of all these different sound bites you hear, and kind of taking each sound bite and using it as an example of where is this falling short, or why was this, what gave this credence initially, and why is it maybe not as it seems. And I started coming across, one of the ones we did was the whole raising the toes, doing RDLs thing. And I started looking online. I was like, let's see if anyone's actually tried to break this down and criticize it. And obviously, like, people understand the anatomy of that. It's like, first of all, the hamstrings don't even get close to your foot or ankle. So even if you just knew that the slightest bit of anatomy, you would know that it just doesn't make sense, and you would know, okay, it innervates the tibial nerve and all that stuff, and that's the sensation you get. But literally almost every coach in our gym that's not us does it. And, yeah, all of them. And the funny thing, they probably went on our website, and what I found is that Christian Thibodeau had maybe done 3 or 4 articles on why you should do it. And now you and I have been in the industry a while, so we know he's very well respected as a strength conditioning coach, does body composition, everything else. Of course, the longer you've been in the industry, he's also been criticized a fair bit as well. But this, for me, just highlighted, and actually as I delved into even more research, more notable coaches were saying things that with a bit of a deeper understanding, like, well, that's not correct. But this has been allowed to stand with no challenge for so long that it's now been pervaded as a truth. And now people just repeat the same thing without, and I think for me at least, and I'm sure this is maybe the goal you guys have with your education as well, is it's bringing more people over to the side that starts to think a little bit more critically about this, and with just a bit of fundamental understanding, you can have your own BS meter of what's right, what's not, or not necessarily what's right, what's wrong, but certainly, is this good practice or is there a better way?
Yeah, 100%. And the tough thing with exercise mechanics is you've got to study it for a while to actually then be able to critically analyze or break down certain movements. So have actually a full understanding of really how to apply it. And it's not just chuck a band on here and there, use some cuffs, lock yourself down with a seatbelt, and you're done. Like, they're all tools and they're all part of it, and they partly help sell the exercise mechanics style thing. but there's so much more to it than that. Whereas, yeah, looking at them key sound bites that may be put out there and understanding actually really what's going on is a tough thing. And many coaches won't be able to do that. So they'll just run with that soundbite. Whereas if they stick with the studying and stick with the education and are willing to continue to practice, continue to experiment, continue to learn off different people who educate in different ways around exercise mechanics, because everyone's got their own little spin on it, then it's amazing over time what you can actually really be able to pick up and fully understand, and then make your own decision what you feel is appropriate.
And I said more people need to get onto the likes of the portal and get some good quality information that you don't just get free online, and it's well worth investing and paying for good quality people who've been presenting it in their own unique way. And I've certainly found that. I mean, I'm a member of the portal. I mean, I get coached by Cal, but I'm a member of the portal as well. And I've certainly been through a good number of their lectures, not all of them, I'll admit, but quite a good number of them. And learning how you speak and how that's delivered versus maybe how Cass and Hansen at M1, and they've obviously got very contradictory belief systems about certain things, but it's good to hear those as well, because you start, well, how do I form my own mind of this? And then you've got Michael at Integra, and so it's great to learn how things have been presented to people, so you kind of make up your own mind about how you're going to apply these things in the first place. Super valuable.
Yeah, 100%. And to get a sense on a little point that you mentioned there about getting hands-on and being taught exercise mechanics face-to-face is key, and being able to experience it. There's only a certain amount that you can learn online or read or look up or try and research on. It is one of them things that once you start to feel and experience, then you can then go and apply it so much better.
There's a bit of a plug then. If you're in the UK or Europe, go to the Muscle Mentor camps, and if you're in the UAE, then there's the mentorship starting in the next few weeks, so get involved.
Yeah, we've still got a couple of spaces left for July camps, 3rd and 4th of July, and the 2 weeks after. I can't remember the dates offhand. 17th and 18th of July. We've still got a few spaces left in Birmingham. If anyone listening is interested, hit us up.
Yeah, we have a few UK listeners, so for the guys who are listening are from the UK, if you're not thinking about it, you need to be thinking about it. So definitely do it. So this will probably lead us right into the last question really, really nicely. So you're the lead educator for exercise mechanics within the Muscle Mentors. It's probably quite clear by now by the time we got to this point in the podcast, but you've taught quite a good number of coaches on this topic. Like you said, you did it while you were at M10, and as you evolve through your own RTS education, you continue to evolve that and continue doing it. The Muscle Mentors practicals and through the portal online as well. One of the main challenges, at least what I've seen from trying to create my own stuff and start talking about it more myself, and I'm sure you've seen the exact same, is just because the area has such a breadth and depth and so much nuance to it, and just applying the knowledge in a meaningful way, it's easy for coaches to kind of brush it off and just like, you know what, that's overly complicated or that's unnecessary. So in your opinion, why should coaches really make the necessary effort to level up their exercise mechanics knowledge?
I think I might have covered a summary of this in my previous one, that we don't understand exercise if we don't understand exercise mechanics. It is I believe it should be a prerequisite to be a personal trainer. However that personal training is delivered, if you don't understand joints, muscles, forces, and everything around that, then you don't understand exercise. You're just giving generic cues, generic tips, passing down that heel elevated RDL, or that toe elevated RDL, should I say, that you've seen someone else do or you've seen someone else write about. Whereas if you understand exercise mechanics and everything involved that, then you can come to your own opinion. So I think it's required to understand training. It's required and if we're going to coach it, if we're going to teach it, we have to know what's going on. It's no different from trying to, in a sense, coach or educate nutrition. You got to know what a protein is. You got to know what a calorie is. You got to know how the body works. So at a similar level, how deep you go with that is down to the individual, but you've got to have a foundational understanding of it. Otherwise, you're just teaching movement.
Yes, I think like the comparison to nutrition is cool, because it's kind of like, well, you kind of need to understand a little bit, yes, energy balance, but what about, of course, metabolism, fat oxidation, what about ATP, what about just a little bit more that just allows you to maybe start thinking about, well, this training protocol, how is that going to be appropriate while they're in this current state physiologically, for example. And then, like I said, I think the thing I found with the exercise mechanics is I actually worked for about 7 or 8 months part-time in a clinic trying to do some post-rehab stuff with people, and didn't have the exercise mechanics knowledge, not as much at least as I do now back then. And I look back and think, even just thinking about the language that the chiros use, that the physios use. And I think if you're going to have like really, really solid relationships with other practitioners who can, of course, help your clients quite tremendously, especially if they're good at what they do, even just understand exercise mechanics to, one, promote longevity in your clients, which they'll obviously love you for, because how often do you hear most personal training clients, my back hurts, my knee hurts, my shoulder hurts?
Yes,
it's a pretty common thing. And then, being able to also have really good conversations with those practitioners versus just either overruling them or just kind of accepting what they say blindly as well. Certainly for me, I found when my clients do go and see their chiro or their physios, I can go on a phone call and I can have a fairly competent conversation about what we're trying to get at. And I think that's massive as well. And the thing is, if you're able to build that network of other practitioners who have skills you don't, and then you're able to have a good non-egotistical narcissistic relationship with those people and have a very synergistic relationship, it's amazing what that can do for your coaching business as well. I don't know if you found the same thing as well, referring out and everything else.
Yeah, it's that ability to build rapport with other professionals is key. If you can talk on a certain level, then they're going to have trust in you, and obviously that's going to help, rather than just dismissing, as you say, what they say, or thinking you know better, right? Like that, actually having an understanding more of the body then gives you an understanding of why they're maybe implementing what they're implementing, and you can maybe agree or disagree with that, but it still can give you the required information to then in a sense still have a conversation with them and communicate with them.
I've learned so much from the practitioners that I've got a referral network with, because you got to remember they've also went to university, they've got degrees, they've many of them are doctors in what they do, and I think it still astonishes me to this day how many personal trainers shrug off, or they don't know what they're talking about. And like you said, if they don't understand exercise mechanics, then technically speaking, they don't either. So yeah, I think it's just really important there's many people to learn from, and it's not just within the industry, it's actually outside that as well.
Yeah. And the key thing is, if you do start getting into it, or if you're already into the exploration of exercise mechanics, is go and study from different people, study from different sources as well, because everyone's going to teach it in a slightly different way. Even if they're in theory almost teaching a similar information, they're still going to give it across in a slightly different way or a slightly different manner. You might have missed a certain bit from someone that you pick up from someone else. So I think just look at a load of people that you, in terms of where you get the information from, rather than just studying from one person. But yeah, it should be a prerequisite to even be a qualified coach, because that is what we do. That we are qualified to train people. Really, when it comes down to it, that's the only thing we're really qualified to do. So we should know exactly what we're doing with that.
For sure. I think that's a good kind of note to finish the main part of the podcast. But of course, we're going to move on to quite a fun bit now, the quick fire round at the end. This is always fun for the guests on. No idea what's coming at you. Always intrigued with the answers to these as well.
Yep, fire away.
Off the bat, we're going to go straight in. Sweet or savory?
Sweet every day.
When people say the savory answer, I'm just thinking that's kind of like my wife and I. Mal's very much savory, and I'm sweet. It's just like polar opposites.
Still that kid in me will go dessert every day. We'd always got that sweet tooth. That, yeah, I'm not saying, obviously I love savory stuff, but if there's some sweet dessert there, I know it'll mess me up digestion wise maybe the next day, but I'll still be tempted.
It's worth the hit sometimes, though. It's definitely worth the hit. If we had to look at exercises, the two-part question: what's the exercise that you're enjoying the most at the moment, or what would you say like your favorite exercise, either to do or to coach right
now? Favorite exercise at the moment, honestly, just because I'm experimenting with different things. Anyone who doesn't know, I've got dodgy knees. Years of playing basketball, dislocated my knee, years of ankle sprains and stuff like that. Hasn't actually helped. So just experimenting with foot position and thought process on like a leg press, but more so like a Kaiser leg press that I've got as well, in terms of just different things I can do with that I've almost got to have a completely different intent on each foot and each leg and each position as I'm going through it. It's not just, let's squeeze my quads and think about knee extension. I find that it's about like 70, 80 degrees of knee extension on my right leg. I really need to go with an outward intent to adjust the line of force through my knee. Especially on the way back in on that eccentric, because if not, I get this shooting sort of grinding pain in my knee. So it's the experimentation around that to then try and get to a point where I can build up intensity. So I just try and build up intensity without that internal thought at that point within the range. I'll get through the workout, but I know the next day I just get this sort of bit of swelling, bit of inflammation. It just won't feel right. So not really something that people can go and apply directly for themselves and try and push out at that exact degrees of knee flexion. But it's just, that's where the exercise mechanics stuff is cool, that especially when you start learning about your own body, you know, at this point within the range on this movement, whatever that is, if I try this or try that, what does that do to the forces? What muscle does that bring in? How does that affect stuff? You experiment, you try, you've got a theory, a hypothesis of how potentially it's going to work. You try it and see what happens. At times I've had clients with impingements and pain through the shoulders, and you understand what's going on a little bit of internally there. And we're like, oh, let's just slightly flex your shoulder and go through that lateral raise. Let's slightly externally rotate, whatever it may be, and see how it feels. So yeah, for me at this moment in time, it's experimental with stuff around leg pressing. Gone are the days when I just lift massive numbers on there. So it's the ability to still apply intensity, but still for myself have a massive internal focus, especially at certain points within the range, to adjust the forces that are going through my knee.
It's pretty interesting. I can definitely relate to that from the, like, even say just positioning, like even like for example humeral or femoral rotation, and kind of rather seeing things as just so straight up and down a linear, it is like you say, some of these little subtle tweaks or nuances actually can be the difference to a client or yourself feeling an exercise like, oh, this feels incredible versus this feels crap. So I think that's quite
Another example of that is something I had to work with for a while that Michael Gordon helped me with, is as I was doing a leg extension, I don't want people to run with this, but as I was doing a leg extension, I had basically a seat belt that went around my calf, around my tib fib, that I pushed out on to affect the forces that were going through my knee. And that ended up feeling better, having that outward intent. So there's certain sometimes cool, funky things that you can play with at some point if you really understand what's going on. But I needed Michael to tell me that and show me that and take me down that direction, and that led me to try some stuff on the leg press as well. But yeah, that's where the exercise mechanics stuff comes exciting, when just everything's an investigation about what's going on. And at no point it's like, oh, I'm injured, I can't train. No, it's like, okay, how can I work around that if there's something going on? And especially as you get older, training, anyone who's played a lot of sport, anyone who's trained at high intensity, there's going to be injuries, they're going to be niggles. It's like, how can we work around them but still train to a good intensity?
That's a really interesting answer. I'm glad I asked that question. This, you're not allowed to say burpees when I ask this next question. Least favorite exercise that you see at the moment, or even that you.
Well, you're already taking my mind off somewhere in terms of a burpee or anything. Least favorite exercise that I'd see at the moment. Oh, do you mean, or just?
Or even if you're doing an exercise at the moment that it's okay for you, but you just hate it, but you know it's good for you, or maybe a bit of both. We can maybe touch on both.
Any, like, just going down that rabbit hole of anything like a burpee, jumping up and down, anything like that, just doesn't get on well with me. I've got a long way to get down. My body doesn't get up and down like that well, so that would in a sense be a straight away a least favorite. I'd say like least favorite, honestly, in terms of core stuff, I've never really liked it, but I know it's a must. It's one of the things that you don't get that same pump or that same sensation that you get through other things. You can't progress it in the same, you can still progress it obviously to a certain extent, but not in the same way you might do other lifts. So I train spinal flexion, spinal extension, spinal rotation, quote unquote core work, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite at all. I just do it because it must do.
Yeah, always the first thing to easily, I'll do it next session, and a lot of people do that as well, because it isn't the most, I don't find it the most fun to train either. Even when I did a lot of CrossFit as well, I never enjoyed the core stuff. I had to do it because, like you say, the body's taking so many forces that if you're not keeping up to a certain standard, then things crumble around you. So
yeah, and I'm someone that if I've got a machine, I'll generally just convenience jump in and do it. But if I've got to set something up, I'll still think, can I be asked today? Unless it's really in my program and meant to be. If I'm trying to experiment with different things, sometimes it'll just get left to the side. So I think there's a key thing, even as long as I've been studying exercise mechanics, there's a key thing that if something's convenient, so much more likely to do it. And that's key with our clients, that we start looking at bands, cuffs, different funky setups, which have got their time and place, but it's just know whether they're appropriate for your client all the time or at what point in time.
Yeah, that's so true. So there you go there. The overarching summary of that is always have a convenience option handy as well. Always.
Yes. Yes.
You're right. So many clients that you've tried to do certain things with, and it's just like, listen, I'm just not going to do it. It's like, okay, fair enough. We'll give you something else.
Yeah, 100%.
If you were stuck on a desert island and you can only take 3 items with you, what would they be and why?
3 items. Well, nowadays I'd take, pardon?
It can be things, people, like it can be anything, literally anything. Imagined or unimagined.
If my wife had listened to this, I'd have to go with my wife, my son, and my dog. 3. Not that she would do, but for myself, I'd go Nautilus chest press, Nautilus pull down, and Kaiser leg press. Then I can pretty much train a full body with them 3 bits of kit to a certain extent, and I'm sorted.
You figure out the survival stuff later, like water and food.
Yeah, don't worry about that. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I need an X amount of water or I need a certain amount of food. I'll say, I'll worry about that later. I'll go and hunt for that. But as long as I can still stay in shape, then I'm all good.
There we go. Nice. I have to say, no one's given an answer even remotely like that, so I quite enjoyed that. That was a good one. Like, kind of train the full body in 3 pieces of equipment. Nice, done.
Yeah, sorted.
The next question's it's a bit of an interesting one. So, in terms of books, you'll have to pick one from kind of each category. What's one business book you've read that's been really influential? One, I hate to use this term, but personal development or mindset book that you've read, and one industry-specific book. If you had to pick one from each of those, what would you recommend people to go and look at, or at least that have been great for you personally?
The Physiology of Joints or Joint Structure and Function. I know that's 2 books. But in the realms of exercise mechanics and started to understand forces, understand what's going on with joints, muscles a bit, you need to go and look at them too. Business-wise, I was going to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, from a mindset point of view and how to manage money. A lot of people, obviously, at the moment, different business coaches talk about earning X amount, but actually having what does he call it? An education, just around a financial education in terms of managing money is key. I think if you want to stay in the game long term, to be able to continue to study, continue to educate, continue to develop yourself, then I think reading Rich Dad Poor Dad is key. I guess that's sort of personal development. You said personal and business development, like
business and personal development.
Yeah, honestly, business-wise, a lot of what I've learned has come from other coaches, other mentors, even to a certain extent, certain clients that I certainly train at the moment who've got successful businesses themselves in terms of they've run a business that have got 100, 200, 300 people in. They've sold their business X amount of years. Like some of the advice that I get off them from a business perspective is huge. So I can't really give a book, I think, directly on business related, because I don't really read so many business books. But personal development, you can't beat Tony Robbins. Going back in the day, you can't beat some of that stuff, because when it comes down to it, a lot of the stuff is just, you can see is almost pulled from that. When you look at a lot of the personal development type things nowadays, they've pulled so many concepts and stuff that he spoke about years and years and years ago. So you can never beat a bit of Tony Robbins, and his voice is just amazing. When you get, even if you haven't listened to that before, and you go and listen to Tony Robbins now, and it's 20 years old, it still resonates with us.
That's a good answer. He is very good, very charismatic, and certainly has a gift for sure.
Yes.
A lot of people have. I think interesting to say about the financial stuff. I mean, I've been lucky in the sense that my background is accounting and finance before getting into the fitness industry. So luckily, staying on top of numbers has never been anything that's felt too arduous or hard to do. And we don't try and compare or do anything crazy. I think one of the smartest things we did in this movie is advice for young coaches, certainly out here in Dubai, like you don't get a pension living in Dubai as an expatriate. So we very early on we went and got in touch with someone to help set up a savings and investment pot. So we just put by, I think it would be the equivalent of £400 or £500 a month And that just goes straight into that. And before we do anything else, and we've got a couple of other things we're looking at investments wise, like, cryptocurrency and other things. But I think just being smart.
They crashed. Crypto crashed, didn't they?
I know, it's not a fun time. The last couple of weeks been quite stressful, but yeah, just, I suppose, like you say, just being smart with money. And then a big part of
I think like the biggest thing is something, as you start to get more successful, as you start to earn more, as simple as it sounds, don't allow your standard of living to go up to the level of what you're earning. Yep. So I know when I started my career, when I was earning 20 grand a year, then when I earned 30 grand a year, I made sure my standard of living didn't go up to a 30 grand a year standard. Then when I earned 40, when I earned 50, it didn't continue to go up. So whatever your earning bracket is, learn how to live below that. So if you earn 50, learn how to live on 30. If you earn 100, learn how to live on 60. Whatever it may be, like, whereas what general people do is they go and get a pay rise, they earn more money, they go up to 100,000 a year, and now they spend that 100. Or they earn 50 when they used to earn 30, and now they go and spend that 50. As simple as that sounds, most people don't implement that. But if you implement that I've been doing this for 14 years in the career, then you start to get a point where you can have a little bit behind you that you can invest, you can do stuff with, rather than just thinking short term while you're in your 20s. I want that car, I want that watch, I want that holiday, if we can go on holiday, whatever it may be. But yeah, as you say, putting a certain amount of money aside each month and then deciding how you spend that, how you invest that, obviously a different conversation. But yeah, something that's often not spoke about, but is key to longevity, because you've always got that bit of backup in other things, maybe outside of the fitness industry, which is key.
It sounds like you're quite like us, like my wife and I were both like the most non-flashy people ever in every compartment you can think of. And so as a result, we're so busy working, we don't have time to spend money. We're so busy focused on the business, and at the moment we're both in contest prep as well, so that's taking up a lot of space and energy as well at the moment. So yeah, like I think when you do exactly, we've found that we've lived very, very much under our means for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden, everything's looking quite secure and and yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice, is if you can live a bit more humbly than your income, then that can be super useful for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Big time. And then the last thing I'd probably ask really is, who should we have next on the podcast?
Well, you've got to be one next in the list of the muscle mentors, really. I've got to say that. You haven't had Al or Ryan on, have you? So you've had Paul when he wasn't a muscle mentor. So, but yeah, you haven't had Al or Ryan on, so it's got to be one of them two.
Yeah, I think I'll reach out to Ryan, because he's obviously got a lot to say on the gastrointestinal side of things, so he'd be great to go on for that, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, you guys are all, the thing is he posts a lot of great stuff about exercise, because you guys are all, I think that's something that a lot of coaches look to, is like so well-rounded across the broad spectrum of the whole thing. But of course you have your little areas that you're very passionate about, but it's very clear that you've all been very well read and studied on, you could talk quite comfortably about digestion. You could talk about female physiology to enough of a point where it's credible. Whereas of course, can't people look at Cal's like, oh, he really knows that stuff, but you guys all know that stuff. So I think that's so it's good to have.
Yeah, that's something that if anyone's new in the game, they think, oh, there's so much to study. It'll come in time. Right? You got to think in years, over time, if you're still passionate, you will delve into female phys a little bit. You'll have a client who's an older female client is going through menopause. You'll have to delve into menopause. Like I've been there, I've gone through them things. Yes, some of it gets rusty if you don't continue to stay on it. But that's the key thing, is having an understanding around so many different areas. And then you have one key focus potentially, but as a coach, you need to understand all these different areas to potentially work with a whole array of clients.
There's a PCOS that got me focused on female phys, for example, and that is, it's always when you can't solve something, you're like, I don't understand it, I need to go figure it out. I think that's a good way to learn anyway. It kind of directs your problems, direct your education almost. It's kind of a good way to go, but do something for you as well.
Yeah, so it's either client problems or your own problems. Really, that if you've got messed up digestion, you're going to look into what's going on in the digestive system. If you've got messed up joints, but you still want to train to a certain intensity, then you're going to look at what's going on with them. So yeah, it's either client's problems or your own problems that then will govern essentially where you go education-wise.
Definitely. Well, listen, you obviously gave up a ton of your time already, which I really appreciate. But last but not least, where's the best place for people to find you?
Just on Instagram, really, James _ the Muscle Mentors. These days, don't really post on Facebook or anywhere else. So just, come and find me on Instagram. When I'm not too manic, I try and put out regular content. But these last couple of weeks, things have been a bit hectic. So I've been a bit distant, but I'll soon get back in the swing of stuff.
And then also, you did already mention about the practical camps, and you've obviously got the members portal as well. So, of course, in the show notes and everything else, when this episode goes out, we always do like some little short little clips from each one. Like, so I've already got a couple of, as much as we hate sound bites from podcasts are pretty good. So we'll take some sound bites from the podcast, and once we put it out there, we'll put a bit of info to like the practicals and the members portal as well, direct people that way as well.
Yeah, sweet. So there's obviously the education portal that rolls over on a monthly basis, so you can dip in, see if you like our stuff, and like, not being biased, but the amount of information on there is insane for the cost. So it's an absolute bargain. So I think every coach obviously needs to be on there. And then obviously the practical camps, 2 days in Birmingham, 3rd and 4th, first weekend and 3rd weekend in July, two separate camps. We've still got, I think, literally only 2 or 3, maybe 1 or 2 spaces on the first weekend, and then a few more available on the second weekend. So act quickly, get in there if you want to get on, because I'm sure they'll fill up relatively soon.
Definitely. Well, I'm sure it will be good to get you back on to maybe dive into some exercise mechanic stuff a bit deeper potentially the next time, which would be good. This is definitely a good intro for people who maybe haven't came across your stuff before. Once again, thanks very much.
Sweet. Cheers, Ross. Cheers for having us.